ladies and gentlemen. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. This means greater coverage and analysis of international news, for it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local. It means greater attention to improved understanding of the news, as well as improved transmission. And it means, finally, that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Hips News. We'd like to thank all our listeners and people who our family members that's out there supporting us and listening. Today we have a special treat for you. We have a special guest from across the pond, and he's here to give a little insight about where he's at and also to talk about the difference between England and Japan. Vessel 2, would you like to say a little something this time around?
Sure. As I mentioned before, I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. I really want to know what's going on outside of Japan, as well as, in globally. It seems like we've been under attack, and the more information we can come across and hopefully use the information to put ourselves in a better position to make wiser decisions is what I wish to accomplish here, and I believe we're going to be able to get that done in this conversation tonight. So thank you for coming on board, and I appreciate everybody listening, and hopefully, like I said, we can come up with some solutions.
PJ,
yeah,
as a person who's been around for a little bit and who's seen things, do you feel that since this pandemic and the push for the vaccine, do you feel that in a future tense or the long run that it will put a barrier between the vaccinated and the non-vaccinated? What I have noticed on the news and such is that there have been somewhat discrimination. I believe you mentioned that there's a push for passports or paperwork. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is so much pressure on ordinary people to get the vaccine without really thinking, without even access to any of the medical research that was done on these vaccines or anything regarding their own situation. Maybe they have an immune problem anyway, maybe it'll affect them in a bad way. None of this real information. There's no way they can invent a vaccine that will do exactly the same thing to all people, because we're all made slightly differently. So it's scary in that sense. But in this country now, the propaganda, it is so heavy that if you go somewhere and you say to somebody that you haven't been vaccinated, you will be in trouble. You'll be shouted down. It's as if you've let down society. It's as if you're some kind of greedy person, selfish person, and as if you're going to carry the virus and kill lots of people. It's completely over the top in regard to the reality of what this virus can and can't do to people. So this idea that you've got a choice is becoming more and more difficult to realize. But nevertheless, there is a strong pushback here. There is a strong anti-vaxxer group here who, whenever they get a chance to attack the politicians in the street, they will do. But the thing is, it's becoming very nasty. You know, there's no middle ground anymore. It's becoming sort of a politicized thing. It's very interesting. Last week in Parliament, there was an MP. They all gathered in the Parliament here because an MP was knifed to death on the street, and they had a special commemoration service. And half of the Parliament were wearing masks, and the other half were not wearing masks. So you had the right-wing party not wearing masks, and the left-wing party wearing masks. And it was very clear evidence that this whole thing has some kind of political message now, and not really anything to do with the medical situation anymore. It's become very, very toxic, very political. Not pretty at all.
Any thoughts, Vessel 2?
Yes. Listen closely to what this man has to say.
Yeah. So if you think about whatever you're seeing on the news, probably it's the same here as it is in Japan. The general pressure is on people to have the vaccine. But a lot of these governments have already spent a large amount of taxpayers' money on buying these vaccines. So they have a duty to themselves to sell it to you. So it seems like a massive sales campaign at the moment, selling you something that we never know. 5 years down the line, we might find out that it's causing some other problem altogether. But we are no further to knowing that than anybody else. There's no way we can figure it out. But it's a very, very strange time. I think we're right at the beginning of it all, because every country seems to be developing a different policy to it. Every country seems to be having more people against it, more people for it. There's all sorts of different rules for going to different countries. They've got all sorts of names, red list country or green list country. It's all really strange stuff going on, and there's no organization to it whatsoever.
Wow.
So Japan is considered a red list country at the moment in this country, but to be honest, Japan's reported cases of the virus are only about 10% of what's reported in the UK. The UK is a genuine red list country, I think, but and going up, still going up as we speak. The case numbers are going up, so it's we're a long way from out of this situation. I think still right at the beginning. The way that technology gets involved in all of this is terrifying as well, because it cuts off. It's not so much cutting off vaccinated people from non-vaccinated people. It's really cutting off people who have access to technology, i.e. smartphones and computers, from people who have no access to these things at all. So how can they get a vaccine pass if they don't even have a phone? It's ridiculous. And these are not cheap things to get a hold of. So I find it's making separating like the middle class and the upper class from the poorer people of the world. It's a nasty situation. For me to actually get the information about the British government pass, I needed to have a personal computer and a smartphone, just to get to page 1 of the whole thing, just to find out about it. Now that cuts off a whole generation of people. Maybe anybody over the age of 70 probably doesn't have the computer smarts to even figure that out. Some of them do, but not many. So you're just cutting off the aged, you're cutting off all sorts of people from being able to move around and do things that they want. It's a complete control grab. There was a great thing I'm digressing now, but there's a great moment about a week or so ago when Facebook went offline for 6 hours. And I think it was Edward Snowden who said, this is going to be the most beautiful time the world has known for at least 10 years. He was quite happy that this had happened. Yeah, get rid of all these giant tech companies, and we might be able to get back to being human beings again. It'd be quite nice. But
Yeah, that would be great.
yeah, we're getting lost in it all. We're getting lost in the fog of it all.
So when we come back after this, break from our sponsor, we'll get into a couple of audio and video that we can discuss afterwards.
Okay.
But, yeah. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Good Morning America is brought to you by Pfizer.
CBS Health Watch sponsored by Pfizer.
Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
ABC News Nightline. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Making a difference. Brought to you by Pfizer.
CNN Tonight. Brought to you by Pfizer. Early Start. Brought to you by Pfizer. Friday night on Aaron Burnett Out Front. Brought to you by Pfizer.
This Week with George Stephanopoulos is brought to you by Pfizer.
This weather report brought to you by Pfizer.
Today's countdown to the royal wedding is brought to you by Pfizer.
And now a CBS Sports Update brought to you by Pfizer.
Meet the Press Data Download brought to you by Pfizer.
This portion of CBS This Morning sponsored by Pfizer.
On how to find the hidden sugars in the American family diet. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Okay, all right.
Okay, yeah, so just simply, got the main channel is the BBC, and they don't use advertising. And the other channels have advertising, but they are strictly regulated about what they can do with pharmaceuticals. So only very, very mild drugs can be advertised on television, like headache or hay fever or something like that. Nothing strong. So you don't get big pharma advertising on British television. And if you did, everybody like that, what you just showed me with the American television, that would make a lot of people angry here, I think. Or just suspicious, very suspicious,
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
So
it wouldn't work here. It wouldn't work here at all, that kind of
protection against infection. It is the innate immune system that protects you from infection by using dendritic cells, T cells, and natural killer cells without antibodies ever becoming involved. This shot has one goal, and that goal is to make antibodies. These antibodies circulate inside of you and cannot prevent an infection. They can only react to something that has already gotten inside of you. They cannot keep something out. The shot decreases the ability of your innate immune system to keep viruses out by 60%. And a booster shot will reduce it even more. Even worse, the antibodies that are created by this shot can no longer neutralize variants and actually enhance the virus ability to infect you. It should be painfully obvious to you by now that fully vaccinated people are getting sick. And this will continue to get worse if you keep trying to jab people while a virus is trying to spread. The variants are emerging from the vaccinated population. This so-called vaccine is still being administered on what's called an emergency use authorization. It is not FDA approved. The FDA approved a biological licensing application for a product called Comirnaty. The application was approved, not the product. Comirnaty is not available in the United States. Therefore, by law, you cannot force people to take this drug without informed consent and without animal trials to prove that it is safe. Mayor Demings, please look at me. You, sir, are in violation of the United States Constitution and the Nuremberg Code. You will be held accountable. Good day.
Well, what say you?
Yeah, I think that makes some sense. Maybe he's over dramatizing slightly, but he's trying to get a message across, and it's a very important message. But I don't know which vaccine is he talking about there. Do we know?
I would say all of them. That's being
All of them, yeah. The way that they work, yeah. I think whether or not the variants are coming from vaccinated people, that would be difficult to say if he was accurate on that one. But I've read the same thing about the authorization for the vaccines. Yeah, it's just the vaccines themselves are not strictly authorized. It's just the application for the vaccines have been authorized, and all of these things are being administered under special emergency laws. We've had a lot of emergency. The British government set up a state if you set up a state of emergency in the UK, you can bypass all sorts of discussion and go straight to putting things into law without really anybody being able to stop it, and they've taken full advantage of that. It's very interesting what he says, because if that became common consensus, then the people of many countries could take their own governments to court and probably win big. But whether or not you can do that under a state of emergency, I don't know. It's very interesting. Yeah, interesting speech. Very well. I liked it when he said to the mayor, "Please look at me in the eye." I like that, because not many people are actually doing that to the people in power at the moment. And I guarantee the mayor he's talking to, probably that was the first he'd heard of any of that. He's probably not researched it at all himself. He's just gone ahead with the what everybody else is telling him to do, basically. So yeah, good. More power to him.
I don't know if you've been witnessing what's going on in Australia.
Yeah.
Here's the latest and greatest from them.
Ask yourself these 3 questions. In my work, do I come into contact with vulnerable people? Is my workplace at a higher risk of infection? Do I work on infrastructure or logistics that are critical to the territory? If your answer is maybe, or I don't know, you need to get the jab. Critically, the direction also applies to industries who directly face customers in circumstances where the worker may not know the vulnerability of the person they are interacting with. So it is simple. If your job includes interacting with members of the public, then you need to get the jab. If you work in hospitality, you need to get the jab. If you work in retail or in a supermarket, you need to get the jab. If you are behind the counter at the bank, if you're a receptionist or positions like that, you need to get the jab. If you are a barber, a hairdresser, a beauty therapist, you need to get the jab. All these workers, and many, many more, directly interact with members of the public. That means you are frontline workers in our economy. That means you must be vaccinated. Of course, there can be exemptions, but these are extremely narrow and must be backed up with medical evidence. Simply not wanting the vaccine is not a reason. Today, we are also announcing the date from which this mandate comes into effect. From Saturday, the 13th of November, if you have not received at least your first dose of a vaccine, you will not be permitted to attend your workplace in that role, and a failure to comply with the direction is a $5,000 fine. That means that workers must have received at least their first dose by Friday, the 12th of November, at the latest. You have 30 days.
I tell you what's happening here now. I don't know if I think it's going to come to Japan. Certain jobs you can't do. You will lose your job. They've just introduced the government pass, which is an app, which you have to put way too much information into in order to get it's just a simple barcode which you download, and it gives you the chance to scan yourself into shops, theatres, also into your workplace. And some companies are refusing to take people on unless they have this barcode. And that's the scariest, most recent thing that we've seen here. I don't know, has that come into Japan yet?
They implement certain regulations,
Yeah.
but it hasn't gone that far just yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is hot off the press. Tokyo lift COVID-19 rules on certified eateries. So the passports are now being issued out. It looks like they're going to lift restrictions Monday.
Where the number of COVID-19 infections continues to decline. The Tokyo metropolitan government is planning to lift all coronavirus-related restrictions on Monday on local dining establishments certified as having anti-infection measures in place. Current restrictions require such eateries to stop serving alcohol by 8 p.m. and close by 9 p.m. More than 102,000 establishments here in Tokyo are certified. That means about 85% of restaurants and bars in the capital will be allowed to resume normal operations. Those without certification are currently asked to refrain from serving alcohol. But from Monday, they'll be allowed to do so until 9 p.m. The owner of this establishment is welcoming the change.
I'm so happy that work is returning to normal, and I can finally do my job as usual.
41 new cases were confirmed in the capital on Wednesday. Infections fell below 50 for the fourth straight day. Nationwide, more than 390 cases were reported. Despite the declining trend, the government's expert panel is asking the public not to let their guards down. The experts say cases in the week through Tuesday rose slightly in 12 of Japan's 47 prefectures.
And still, we are not fully sure how many people actually been vaccinated as well.
Yeah.
The numbers have said is about 68 to 73%, but also they said that it could have been somewhat not exaggerated, but kind of inflated, you know. But definitely 60% of that number is mostly the elderly.
Yeah, yeah, that's the way it happened here. The elderly were very quick to take it up. The younger, most of the younger people were a bit more reluctant to take it up. But yeah, I think most countries are going to stall around 60-70% mark on all of this, whatever they do. They've even started talking about kids at the moment here. They've just started wanting to get 12 to 15-year-olds, but a lot of the parents are reluctant to do that without knowing a bit more. So it's not being taken up that much. It's ridiculous. Whatever, they've got so much of this stuff, they just want to use it all up, as many people as they can. But
it's already bought and paid for.
Yeah, it's already bought and paid for. This is the thing. They've spent so much money on these things that they can't just have it lying on a shelf doing nothing. So they've got to get it out there. And the general feeling about the third jab is very much that initially, after the first two jabs, everybody was being told that you're fine then for at least a couple of years. Most of what the pharmaceutical companies were telling you at that stage were, yeah, no, you're fine. And now all of a sudden, the immunity level is dropping after 6 months or something like that. So, you know, you think, well, hang on a second, that can't be right. But yeah, they're buying this stuff, so they have to put it in people. Yeah, it's mad. It's all mad. And then they just talk to you about it in terms of percentages. Well, it's only a small percentage of the population who are being affected adversely or something like that. But it's still something they didn't know before they stuck it in that person's arm. So this is why you start to think, oh my God, what are they doing? They're just using everybody as guinea pigs, really, for these things. And we still won't know for 4 or 5 years exactly what damage has been done or not done.
The long-term effects, yeah, it's hard to a gauge on what's going on when you're relying on day-to-day information to be updated.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're correct. This is a live experiment on humanity.
Yeah, it is. It's a live experiment for
and no one's going to be held accountable for any mass fallout of people. And from what I've heard, the companies who've produced this, you can't sue them.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how the government then will turn around, anybody's government will turn around and force you to take this.
Force. Right.
And as far as Japan is concerned, I don't really think they will have to go to that extent to force the Japanese people to take anything.
No.
They played the cards right. They restricted them from drinking. And now that the possibility of you can go out and drink all night is the option on the table, I believe the lines are still going to be long as ramen shop lines.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad that there's no real pushback here, but it's to be expected. I think it's their way. They might tell you individually, from my experience, they will tell you individually what they feel, and I've had it numerous times. Co-workers and whatnot, they tell me, and they have told me, that they wasn't interested, they didn't want to take it, and everybody that's told me that has been vaccinated.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's the whole thing about not wanting to be the one who sticks out. You know, it's a very compliant with these things. Yeah, one of the easier countries to get everybody vaccinated, possibly. Yeah, I think.
Without question. I mean, and they played their cards right. They restricted the alcohol. And that's really their only outlet as far as stress relief goes. So
I agree with that.
It was pretty much a cakewalk.
Yeah. And turn off the tap.
Right.
And people start to listen, don't they? Yeah.
Any last words before we go, PJ? We appreciate you.
Just a real pleasure to talk to you guys. It's nice to talk to open minds. That's all I can say.
The pleasure's ours, and please be safe out there.
And and you guys, you're still
stay out of harm's way.
Yeah, not one of my strong points, but anyway, I'll do what I can.
Right.
Because there's quite a lot going on at the moment.
And it's always good to keep abreast of what's happening, and once that they can help one step ahead, and information is power. That's what they say. So yes, again, thank you. Vessel 2, would you like to do the final thoughts?
Closing thoughts, yes. Please, everybody out there, stand your grounds. We're not promoting, we're not saying that you shouldn't take the vaccine or the jab. Just think about it before you do. And if you don't, make sure you know what you are in for, because it seems like no matter where you turn, tyranny is at your shoulder. Vessel 1?
Yes. Well, I concur wholeheartedly. Like always. Thank you. Thanks to the listeners and the viewers that tune in every week. And like always, we'll see you next week.